Today I'm going to talk to you about The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. I was actually happily surprised at how simple and easy to understand the language was, and I would trust this to any student who is ready for intermediate level, kind of ready to read on their own. Except I just have one warning for you guys, and that is that at the end of the story, there is some use of Old English, and if I gave this book to a student to read, I would tell them don't worry too much about the last part where the dialogue is a little bit strange, and just go over it one time together. It doesn't really change the storyline so that you can understand the whole story without much problem, and that last little bit I would just go over it together. So I'm going to read to you a little bit from the beginning so you get an idea of what the flavor of the writing is. Once there were 4 children whose names were Peter, Susan, Edmund, and Lucy. The story is about something that happened to them when they were sent away from London during the war because of the air raids. They were sent to the house of an old professor who lived in the heart of the country, 10 miles from the nearest railway station and 2 miles from the nearest post office. He had no wife, and he lived in a very large house with a housekeeper called Mrs. Macready and 3 servants. Their names were Ivy, Margaret, and Betty, but they do not come into the story much. He himself was a very old man with shaggy white hair, which grew over most of his face as well as his head, and they liked him almost at once. But on the first evening, when he came out to meet them at the front door, he was so odd-looking that Lucy, who was the youngest, was a little afraid of him, and Edmund, who was the next youngest, wanted to laugh and had to keep on pretending he was blowing his nose to hide it. As soon as they had said good night to the professor and gone upstairs on the first night, the boys came into the girls' room and they all talked it over. "We've fallen on our feet, and no mistake," said Peter. "This is going to be perfectly splendid. That old chap will let us do anything we like." "I think he's an old dear," said Susan. "Oh, come off it," said Edmund, who was tired and pretending not to be tired, which always made him bad-tempered. "Don't go on talking like that." "Like what?" said Susan. "And anyways, it's time you were in bed." "Trying to talk like mother," said Edmund. "And who are you to say when I'm going to bed? I go to bed You go to bed yourself. Go to bed yourself." "Hadn't we all better go to bed?" said Lucy. "If it sounds good to you, then you should definitely pick this up." It was not difficult language, and since it's a bit longer, it's 206 pages. So for a series, I think if you could get readers into this first one, then you'd have a whole series lined up and prepared for that.